So the Springfield Echelon is the latest, greatest hotness from Springfield. It is the striker fire pistol that you need, according to the internet. However, today we're going to see, is that true? Is the Springfield Echelon a great striker fire pistol that should be your duty, carry, competition gun, etc.? Or is it just another mediocre release? First off, full disclaimer, I did not buy this pistol, but Springfield did not send it to me. I actually have a friend who went and purchased this Echelon because he thought it'd be an interesting pistol and wanted to buy it, and then he offered to me if I'd like to use it for testing, evaluation, and ultimately make this review. Of course, I took him up on the offer, and that's where we're at today. So, not only is this not sent to me by Springfield, I'm not an influencer, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm not paid by anyone to make this video, but also, I have no investment in this pistol either, right? I'm either not going to be super disappointed if it has an issue, and I'm also not going to be super invested where I want this pistol platform to succeed because I invested my money into it. So ultimately today, I think I can give one of the most unbiased reviews possible of the Springfield Echelon. Now, first impressions of the Echelon, I definitely liked it. It reminded me a lot of the Springfield Hellcat, but with a lot of improvements, right? The trigger's definitely better, some more aggressive slide serrations. Obviously, it's a bigger pistol, so it's a lot easier to shoot. So it's basically a bigger Springfield Hellcat. So if you already like the Hellcat, you'll probably like the Echelon. And my impressions was, hey, it's a bigger Hellcat. The Hellcat was a perfectly acceptable pistol, and this is probably going to be a perfectly acceptable pistol as well. So if you saw my Springfield Hellcat review, you'll notice a similarity in something I don't like about the Echelon, and that's going to be the iron sights. If you look here, you've got that U-notch painted rear and then that tritium green front. Now, a blacked out rear high-vis front is my preferred sighting system, so in reality, you could take a Sharpie and Sharpie out that U-notch there and make it just a blacked out U-notch. But what I don't like about these, especially on the Echelon, when this is marketed as a optics-ready pistol, you're supposed to be putting an optic on this thing basically out of the box. Why am I paying extra for sights I don't need? Ultimately, these are just going to be backup sights. As soon as an optic is slapped on this bad boy, they're backup sights. I'm not using the sights. So I really don't need to be spending tritium money when I could be saving money and then putting that money towards an optic, and it could be lowering the overall cost of this pistol. So not only do I personally not like the sights, but I think it's bad for the consumer to be paying for a feature that in reality, as soon as you put an optic on here, you're not even going to be using. Now, another gripe I have with the pistol is it only comes with 2 magazines. Now, they do both come with extended base pads. One of them has the extended base pad installed. The other one, you can install it yourself, which is nice. So you get 20 round magazines, right? Fit very nicely in the gun. If you're going to conceal carry this, right, you probably use the flush base pad and then use the extended base pad on the other one, which is great, but it's only 2 of them. And that's great for carrying, right? You know, one in the gun and a reload, but for training, for competition, all this stuff, you're going to want to go out and buy more magazines. And while they aren't incredibly pricey, it's not like they're SIG magazines, it'd still be nice if it came with 3 or 4 magazines in the box instead of only 2 of these guys. Now, I have seen people saying they are having issues with the magazines where the base plates are falling off and all that stuff. From what I can see, it's user error or errors from the factory where the base plates weren't installed correctly. But I have not had any issues with the magazines. I've put plenty of rounds to these things. Only having 2 magazines to use, so all the rounds are just going through 2 magazines, so more wear and tear than, let's say, on a pistol that comes with more magazines. And like I said, no issues, but that is a concern to have. Just make sure your base plates are properly installed on the Echelon, because if they're not, they might come flying off on you while you're using it at the range. So talking about the ergonomics of the pistol, there is something about the ergonomics that I don't care for, and that is how wide this back strap is right here. The back of the pistol, the tang of the pistol, whatever you want to call it. It's very wide, to the point of some slight discomfort when you're shooting the pistol, when you're using the pistol. It doesn't make it unusable, it's not going to get you killed in the streets, but it would be nicer if this space was reduced. Now what's cool is because this has the fire control group system, kind of like a SIG 320, where I can take the fire control group out of the pistol, and then the frame is not the receiver, it's not the serialized portion. That means I can buy new frames online on Springfield's website. They're about $60, which is not a bad price at all. But the thing is, what comes out of the box is the medium grip, and you'd have to go online and buy that smaller grip, which is like, okay, that's fine. But my other complaint with the ergonomics is I wish this grip was more aggressive. Compared to the Springfield Hellcat, the grip on the Echelon is not as aggressive as the Hellcat was. The way the grip works on both the Hellcat and the Echelon is it's kind of smooth to the feel normally, but when you really grip the pistol and lock your hands in there, it gets a little more aggressive because there's more aggressive texturing under the surface, so to speak. However, like I said, not as aggressive. And if you want that more aggressive grip texture, what you actually have to do is buy the large backstrap, because that's the only, or large grip, because that's the only grip that comes with the aggressive grip texture. Now, that's kind of disappointing because I would like to have the grip that fits my hand better and the aggressive grip texture, so you're kind of screwed if you have really small hands. I have about medium average size hands, so I can use the medium grip, but the large grip's probably gonna be too big for me. And so if I want that aggressive grip texture, I won't be able to have the aggressive grip texture and a grip frame that actually fits my hand. So I don't know why Springfield's doing it like that. Hopefully in the future there'll be more SKUs where you can get the small with the aggressive or the medium with the aggressive. But for now, out of the box, you get the medium without the aggressive grip texture. And if you want that aggressive grip texture, you've got to get the large. But if like me, you're having that issue where this area is here too thick, then you have to get the small. So it'd be nice. That modularity sounds cool, but when you're limiting my options based on my hand size, that is definitely a negative. So now, other than those two complaints, I actually really enjoy the ergonomics of the Echelon. The first thing is going to be the grip angle. Compared to like a Glock 17 right here, the grip angle is very similar. You do have changeable back straps on the Echelon, so if you want a different back strap, if you want a little bit less aggressive of that hump, you can change that. The one I have in here basically mirrors a Glock exactly, so when I feel this thing, when I shoot this thing, it feels just like a Glock, which is what I'm used to, and it's really nice. Another thing about the ergonomics I like is the fact that the grip texture, while it's not as aggressive as I'd like, it does continue up here. Most pistols, stock grip texture kind of stops around the magazine release, but this continues higher. So when you do form your grip, you do have that grip texture up there. You also have some texturing up here, both the takedown lever and these little places for your thumb. So if you don't go all the way here, because this is pretty far forward on the pistol, when you grip the pistol, even if you're back here, you got a lot of texturing here. Now, if you're a lefty, you only have that one spot right there. So if you're a lefty, you better grip pretty far forward to get onto here, because if you grip further back, you're not going to have anything to grab onto. But if you're right-handed, like the average person is, you've got plenty of real estate here for a little thumb ledge, which is nice. You've got a double undercut, which is nice. No Glock knuckle or anything like that. And you can get a little bit higher for your support hand. And you have some texturing up here, so if you're one of those people that likes to kind of wrap their index finger of their support hand around here, you can do that as well, and you've got some texturing to support it. Really nice slide serrations as well, so it's really easy to rack the slide, whether it's from the front or the rear. Obviously, when you have an optic mounted back here, you just can rack it off the optic. But back here, it's pretty easy to rack the slide, do those press checks, all that sort of stuff. So one thing that's really nice about the Echelon is the controls. You have both an ambidextrous slide release and magazine release, meaning you can use this whether you're a lefty or a righty. It's not going to matter. It's going to be super easy to use. And what's nice about the slide release is it's very low profile. While it does have a nice ledge here to put your thumb on and drop the slide release, when compared to a standard pistol like a Glock, it's not as big and therefore as easy to inadvertently hit and lock the slide back while you still have ammunition in your magazine, or prevent the slide from locking back when you run out of ammo. So a nice low profile slide release, but at the same time, very effective. Now, one thing a lot of people take into consideration on a pistol is the trigger. How's the trigger out of the box? Well, let's check it out. So you've got a little bit of pre-travel here to the wall. Nothing crazy, nothing terrible, especially for a duty carry, more serious use pistol. Come here, you're at the wall. A little bit of creep, a little bit of sponginess, and a brake. Braking somewhere around 4.5 to 5 pounds. Come up, come up, come up, reset. A little bit of that pop forward, you got to go through that sponginess, that creep again, and you got your brake. But it's very nice, very easy to reset, very crisp. It's a pretty nice trigger. I would compare it to a stock Gen 5 Glock trigger, but the trigger shoe is a lot more ergonomic. It's this slightly curved, mostly flat trigger. It's very comfortable. There's a lot of space on the trigger for your finger as well. It has some of that kind of chamfering on the sides, so you're not gonna it's not aggressive on the side of your fingers. And what's nice is the dingus on the trigger dingus goes fully flush versus a Glock where it sticks up a little bit. So definitely a nicer trigger in terms of feel of a Glock and in terms of the actual quality of the trigger press, all that stuff. Like I said, I'd put it on par with a Gen 5 Glock trigger, if not actually a little bit better. Now, another thing about this pistol is the optic mounting system. The optic mounting system is really cool. It's very reminiscent of the Shadow System's optic mounting system, where you can mount a variety of optics without using any plates or anything. However, I do have some issues with the optic mounting system. If you look here, there is a gap on the front and the back of the optic mounting system. Now, there are recoil bosses that you pop in there and it locks in, and I mean, this optic's really secure in here, this Holosun EPS. But I do foresee the issue of, like, if you're doing one-hand manipulations or simply impacts on the optic, where that spacing back here and up here will leave space for the optic to move and ultimately to possibly destroy screws, damage screws, or completely shear them off. If you look at something like this Glock MOS, it has the MOS plate system, which I'm not a fan of. This optic system's definitely better overall than the MOS system. What's good about the MOS system is it fits the optic perfectly, right? If I'm using an aftermarket plate, of course. The stock MOS plates are trash, worse than this. But if I use an aftermarket plate, I can fill in that gap here. And something like Shadow Systems, they actually come with little spacers to fill in the gap between the optic and the slide. So it would be nice if there was some sort of little spacer system or something to pop in here, so that way there's less chance of the screws shearing off. Because like I said, I could see like a really hard impact or something hits the optic, and those recoil bosses just aren't enough to cut it, and it is shearing the screws off or damaging the recoil bosses. So filling in these gaps here would be great. Just like I said, little spacers, something like that would definitely do the job, and I think would lead to the reliability and durability of this optic system. So that segment you just saw on the optic mounting system, that was actually recorded a couple days ago. But I'm actually using that because if you notice, there's no optic mounted on this pistol at all through all the current footage that you're seeing. And there's a reason for that. And I'll get into that in a moment, but I just wanted to point that out for you guys. Now, one of the things I have noticed about this pistol, while it shoots, I'll say very similarly to like a Glock or most striker-fired pistols, is it does feel punchier. Not necessarily snappier, but punchier. Like I feel more of the recoil as I'm shooting it. And ultimately, it does seem a little bit harder to control than just like a standard Glock 17. So what I did is I went out to the range with this standard Glock 17. The only thing it has is stippling and an optic. Otherwise, it's a stock Glock 17. And I shot the two pistols together. And I will say, maybe I'm just more used to shooting Glocks, but these are just two striker-fired pistols that are very similar. I could shoot the Glock a lot faster. I could get a return back on target a lot faster with the Glock, and I felt more comfortable shooting the Glock. So I don't know entirely what it is. Maybe it's the way it's sprung, because it's a single spring recoil guide rod as opposed to like the new Gen 4, Gen 5 Glocks that has a multi-piece guide rod. This is a single piece guide rod and a single spring, so maybe that's part of it. I'm not entirely sure, but this definitely has a punchier recoil impulse, almost closer to shooting like a 40 cal pistol. And it's not uncontrollable, it's not terrible or anything like that, but it is something I noticed, that it doesn't shoot as nice, at least for me, as a Glock. So when I was testing, so not only was I going to test the two pistols, the Echelon and the Glock 17, and its recoil with standard range ammo, but I wanted to test with Spear Gold Dot 124 plus P, try that carry ammo with that higher pressure to really see how does this compare to a Glock. However, after one round of 124 plus P, something happened. All right, 124 plus P in the Echelon. Interesting. The EPS that was installed, torqued to spec. You can see the witness marks here. I torqued it to 15 inch-pounds. It came off, and these are the screws included with the Echelon. They don't seem to go very deep, to be fair. And then if we look at the Echelon itself, we'll just sit in there now. So I don't know if the screws that it came with just didn't go deep enough to hold in place. Didn't have an issue until I went to shoot 124 plus P, and yeah, that's not good. So as you just saw, that was not very good for the Echelon. And now you see why I used that earlier video clip from that previous review talking about the optic mounting system. My concerns were actually only for manipulations off the optic. I wasn't even really anticipating anything to happen under recoil. But as soon as I put literally one round of 124 plus P through this pistol, that optic went flying off. I mean, hell, even when my Glock 34 exploded, the optic did not come off. And that was using a standard MOS plate. And MOS plates are notorious for optics flying off and hitting people in the face, but I've never had it happen to myself on an MOS plate. But straight up, the optic flew off and hit me right in the face. Now, some people might say, oh, you installed it incorrectly, or the screws backed off over time. Well, I'm going to say no to both of those. I installed it correctly to the specs of 15 inch-pounds, which is what you see on most optics, and that was the manufacturer specs for the Echelon and for the Holosun EPS. I also put witness marks, so that way, if the screws were to start to back out, I'd be able to see that and recognize it, and the screws did not back out. The screws actually stayed in place. It's the threads, looks like some of the threads inside the slide itself and on the screws, they sheared out and stripped out, and ultimately led to the pistol optic to go flying off the pistols. It's not the end of the world, but I am putting in that realm, for me, of like a catastrophic failure. Because if your optic goes flying off your pistol when it's been properly installed in some sort of defensive encounter or duty encounter, that would be a catastrophic failure to me. Yes, you still have your sights and they're totally usable, but if I'm in the middle of doing something important and all of a sudden my optic comes off, that's going to be a very, very bad day. So what are my final thoughts on the Echelon after putting a lot of rounds to this and ultimately having that catastrophic failure with the optic system? I currently don't recommend the Echelon. Now, I am going to contact Springfield customer service. I'm going to see what they say, and if they say, oh, yep, that's an issue, we'll take care of it, we'll give you some longer screws, or we'll fix the slide, or whatever, it's going to be dependent on that. And ultimately, I will do a update video talking about what Springfield said, whether they said that, hey, we're not going to do anything for you, or hey, we're going to take care of it, and we're going to give you a whole new pistol. Who knows? Only time will tell. But I wanted to at least put this video out here now so people can see that this is a legitimate issue that I've had. Like I said, I didn't have any of the magazine-related issues that everyone was talking about, but I did have, to me, a far worse issue where your optic comes flying off. I mean, obviously, your magazine exploding isn't good, but you can kind of test and make sure your base plates are properly installed. You can't, when you install the optic and you thread lock it in, you're not really anticipating anything to happen to it. So that's definitely a bad day, and ultimately, at this point, until I hear back from Springfield and learn more, this is not a pistol I'd recommend someone to buy, even if you did like the Springfield Hellcat. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you liked seeing my thoughts and opinions on the Springfield Echelon, go ahead and leave a like down below. If you think I'm some Glock shill that hates Springfield and I sabotaged the pistol just so I could get that on video and talk bad about the Echelon, well, there's a dislike button for a reason. Otherwise, guys, head in the comments section. Let me know what you think about the Echelon, whether it's from my review or your personal experiences. Have you had issues with the magazines? Have you had issues with the optic system? Let me know. Otherwise, guys, I'm releasing new videos, so subscribe and stay tuned.